everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 98. And in this episode, we're going to ask a question. Is Assassin's Creed too restrictive? Can we tell, or should we tell, new stories, new characters, new points of view? And we're going to cover a few different topics. We're going to talk about the lore and how the lore has been explored over previous games and how we can explore it in new games. We're going to talk about historical time periods and the different geographies that we visited. We're going to look at the stories of our protagonists as well. So where should we start, Declan? I mean, we've got 13 or 14 games, depending on how you number them, covering 2,500 years of history, many different countries. We've had protagonists who are start as master assassins like Altair, who then had a fall from grace when he made a number of very critical mistakes. We've had protagonists like Edward, who was very much an outsider and gradually grew to understand the assassins and then join them. We've had people like Cassandra, who was never a member of the Assassin Brotherhood or the Hidden Ones because it didn't exist in her time period. And we've had Aya and Bayek's story of founding the Hidden Ones. So we've explored many different stories and many different points of view. But I was thinking about the games, and there's always three strands that these games have. You've got your Isu, the ones who came before. What have they left behind? Whether it's advanced technology or sort of ruined temples. We've got our historical time period with our protagonists, and then we've got our modern day story as well. And different games have had more and less of these three strands of the story. But I'm wondering first of all about lore. So we've had games that have explored the Isu in great detail. Thinking of Valhalla, for example, there's a huge amount of Isu lore built into that story with Basim and with Eivor and Sigurd. And then we've had games where the lore is absolutely there, but it's certainly less present as part of the game. Thinking of Origins, we do have a couple of temples that we explore, but a lot of the lore is kind of left more hinted at than actively explored. So I'm wondering for you, where would you start in terms of, are there new ways we can explore the lore or new stories that we can tell?
I think absolutely there is new ways to explore the lore and tell stories, but the problem is, as the show politely describes, it's just too restrictive at the moment. And by that I mean, I know it's weird to say the law is restrictive because the law has to be restrictive. You can't bend the law. That's not very fair. But Assassin's Creed has built the identity of Assassins vs Templars. That's the only law points a lot of the games have focused on. It's just Assassins vs Templars. A little bit of Isu, not a lot. Then Black Flag switched up with the Sages. And then after Unity, Sages were dropped just for the back to the basic Assassins vs Templars. And now a lot of people who've had the Isu through Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla are saying that we are taking away the lore of the Isu because we're not keeping them mysterious. So I kind of think that we're at this point now with the game so old that can we explore new stories? Yes. Will it be easy? Well, no, because you've accidentally restricted the lore by creating an identity where you market these games of Assassins vs Templars. You're not giving people the wiggle room to say Isu or Templars, and if they were to do a Templar only story without Assassin's content, so imagine Rogue where Shay doesn't go rogue, it would fail because a lot of fans would not see it as an Assassin's Creed game because there's no Assassins. I wouldn't mind because I think Assassin's Creed has to have Isu, Assassins or Templars. That's the three pillars of the lore in my opinion. So I think we can tell the stories, we can do new settings, but I think how they're going to do it is going to be very restrictive because me included and a lot of fans are wanting the next game to be Assassins vs Templars just because I miss assassin combat like stealth and all that. But you can't really tell an Assassin vs Templar story without it being already done, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm wondering whether I'm trying to think through, like as you say, it would be nice to have a maybe have a more traditional assassins versus Templar story. Could you do that and kind of ignore the Isu aspect entirely? Do you always need to have that piece of Eden as the plot device or the MacGuffin that drives the story forward? I wonder.
I'm gonna say no. Like, I know it's very weird because all the games do chase a piece of Eden, but I still believe that this Templar vs Assassin feud, I know it's always going to involve pieces of Eden, but as Valhalla rightly showed through the London and the Jorvik arc, none of them had connections to pieces of Eden. They were just Templars being Templars. So I think you don't need the Isu, but with how Valhalla set it up, you're going to need some Isu influence for modern day, even if you don't have it in the past.
That would be an interesting. I mean, I know we've had that with AC3 and Juno in the temple, but have we done Isu in the well? Actually, do you know what? Think about Valhalla and how Valhalla's main story ends. We have a sage, an Isu descendant, or is reincarnation the right word? I'm not sure what the right word is, but we have an Isu descendant right now in the modern day, don't we? Which is fantastic. Um, so actually, that's an area they are, I suppose, that we might explore in the next game, assuming it picks up where we've left off, at least with the modern day story. Um, when you were talking about assassins versus Templars and whether could we just have a game that ignores one half of that, it might be interesting to go into a sort of what about a civil war type scenario where there's a disagreement of ideology, either among the assassins or the Templars. We explore the creed or the different influences, because there are the assassins to me always seem like a bit more of a loosely organized group than the Templars, which makes sense with their philosophy, the free will. So you are kind of free to explore and interpret the creed and implement the creed in your own way.
Um, to be honest, for a Civil War type game, um, I would probably more want to see a Templar becoming an assassin, similar to Rogue.
Oh, that sounds interesting, because we've done the reverse, haven't we? As you say, with Rogue, where I mean the assassins they were doing some pretty bad stuff in the 18th century, weren't they? It was Haiti and Lisbon destroyed in earthquakes. And I can sympathise with Shay. He didn't like. I mean, there's a line he says right at the start, isn't there, when he's meeting with, I forget the guy's full name, but the French leader, Le Chevalier de Vendry. He's not particularly nice to Shay, and Shay says, "I don't feel very free at the moment," which I think is just a great line, and you can understand why he realizes, or he comes to the conclusion that the assassins are not always good, they're not always right, and he walks away, and yeah, we see some pretty tragic events. But wouldn't it be interesting to explore in the other direction? In fact, thinking about it more, wouldn't it be fascinating to have a Templar, a committed believer in the Templar way of bringing peace, who spends time in the Animus exploring an assassin's life, um, and in the modern day segment comes to that conclusion that actually free will is the best path to peace, and walks away from the Templars either at the end of the modern day story or during it, and then they're being chased. And you could have quite an interesting modern day story through turning the story on its head, as you say, and having a Templar that walks away.
I think running with that idea of yours, it would be really cool to do a Black Flag spin, but don't do third person. Do third. I mean, don't do first. Do third. Where we're, as you said, we're an Abstergo agent. We're running through assassin memories, and the key points I do want to add, because I want a template game that fights the assassins but ends up joining them based on the three ironies. So the assassin, maybe in the life of the assassin, the modern day protagonist has the ironies in his head. He knows what they are, and he keeps talking to himself mentally. So it's like an what's a voiceover of what he's doing in the animus, maybe like a database, like he's recording his database, and he keeps mentioning the three ironies, but starts to piece together how these three ironies create freedom, and the more of a a dogma like Arno worded. And at the end, as you said, I would love it. So as he's fleeing from Abstergo, he's recruited by Basim and William Miles as a perfect tie-in to Valhalla. So as Basim's bringing the fight to the Templars, this would be a great idea for them to come together with a really big sage twist that maybe this agent has links to instruments of the First Will, if that makes sense. So they're all like tied together, but you see a Templar becoming an assassin because he believes that the three ironies are more way to explore how great the creed can be if you think about it logically, if that makes sense.
It does, and I was, as you were speaking, it was reminding me of very much of AC1 and the dialogues between Al Mualim and Altair, and they're very much on the philosophy of the creed, aren't they? As you know, Al Mualim is kind of teaching or teaching again the creed to Altair, who has sort of forgotten or ignored the creed in the opening scene. And it's very much a study of the philosophy of the creed, isn't it, AC1? And to have a game or a story like you've just discussed, where actually the Templar explores the creed and explores the ironies and comes to understand the ironies, or maybe even accept that yes, the ironies exist, but as you say, they are the path to freedom. Sorry, peace through free will. Um, that would be an interesting philosophical kind of story, which would kind of reflect AC1 in a really satisfying and thought provoking way. But you made what you said there made me think of you said something that I wanted to ask. So in Valhalla, we have Basim, who has emerged from 1200 years being plugged into the Yggdrasil device. Um, so he's in the modern day. He's with, we have to assume, although I don't think we see them at the end, do we? When Basim emerges, no, they must be there. I just don't remember the final cutscenes, but they must be there in the log cabin. Rebecca, Sean, although we don't see William Miles at all in the game, do we? Do you think Basim is an ally? We're going off on a tangent. We should just say at this point, this is not what was in the talking notes. But do you think Basim will be an ally or a supporter of the assassins? I kind of feel like he's going to be, and it's a pun, I know. I feel like he's going to be a rogue agent. He's there to do what he wants to do for him and Alethea, and I could see him using whichever side he thinks will further his goals, rather than taking a kind of an independent philosophical view that the assassins are right or the Templars are right. But what do you think?
I think he's playing a game of chess, personally. I think he's spent so long in the reader that we have no clue what simulations he saw, what realities he picked, because we know there is a whole idea there is a multiverse now in Assassin's Creed based on simulation, not time travel, it's legit simulation. So he chose this simulation with Layla for a reason. He chased Layla down and brought her to Eivor's grave for a reason. And we're led to believe it's for the spear and for Harvey, but what if it's a game of chess? Really big game of chess. All pieces. He's given the assassins what they want. They want to fight the Templars. They've been in hiding since the Purge, but they need to come back, and he's going to give them that. What's more powerful and threatening to the Templars than assassins going, hey, we've got a sage who knows about the animus because they did their own thing in Isu times. We could probably recreate some apples of Eden and beat you, but at the same time, I think he's going to play the Templars off, give them a bit of knowledge on the background, a bit of, if do this, do that, so he can get all the pieces together to bring his family back. Althea did say
Yeah,
in Odyssey that the Isu are coming back. I think she mentioned about the Dun not interfering, and I think because they may have a neutral stance to humanity, I think what she means is that, and I'm predicting it now, that when we get to the very end of Assassin's Creed, the whole big finale, we're going to see the remaining sages uniting to take down the humans because they're the only ones who can activate every Isu device. And we're finally going to see Templars and Assassins unite to take down the sages and to end the rebellion that the East were trying to put up, but it'll probably just fail because there'll be another total catastrophe that they cannot stop. But it's not about stopping it; it's about surviving it. That's a big
Well, that
tangent.
that would be. I mean, we're talking today about, is it too restrictive? If you have them properly uniting in a modern day repeat of the Isu fighting the humans, there's a totally new story. That would be fantastic. We've only seen it briefly in flashbacks, haven't we? In the sort of the hidden truth videos. So that would be very interesting. So, do you think then that there should always be in each of these games those three strands of Isu, assassin, sorry, historical period and assassins and Templars, and modern day assassins and Templars?
Yes, and I argue, and I will always argue to this day, we could have a game like Odyssey, which has no assassins, no Templars, AC game, but a modern day that is assassins versus Templars. Imagine AC3's modern day, where Desmond infiltrated different Templar locations for information. Imagine that, but the past game is just about sages and Isu with higher humans with higher Isu DNA, like a tainted one, like Cassandra, fighting back an oppression. So this person they're fighting isn't a Templar, it is an assassin. They're just fighting back an oppression, similar to how Ava is mentally fighting her destiny, which is order to be free. That sort of philosophy. And I would still say that's an Assassin's Creed game because you're getting modern day, which is Assassins versus Templars. There's your Assassins, there's your Templars, but the past where you spend majority of your time is um is just Isu, but again, that is super restrictive.
It is, and well, we know that Odyssey was not popular with some fans because of the lack of assassins and Templars in the historical segment of the game. But you make an interesting point. Could it, if there was more modern day story that was properly fleshed out with some progress and some character development there, could you have that historical phase that has some of those um, traditional aspects removed, but it's still a satisfying story because, as you say, you've got the modern day segment that does that kind of progress. So that's why not have a lone person who is a sage or discovers this mysterious artifact buried under a pile of rocks and starts to use it. That would open up some new storytelling possibilities, certainly.
I think the only problem that is that whole idea is restrictive because one of the worst features people argue in Assassin's Creed is modern day. Not because of the content, but a lot of fans who play it just want to be stuck in the past. They don't want to leave the animus. A lot of fans don't like the older games because they get pulled out now and then. I love it, I think it's great, but a lot of fans want the immersion of playing as that past assassin, but you can't remove modern day because how do you explain you're playing a simulation without modern day? So it is falls in the category of to have a very coherent modern day, you're going to have to pull people out of the animus, just like Valhalla signified that you had to leave the animus to get some cutscenes. But if you didn't, or no one pulled you out, then you're restricting the game because you're locking down the modern day. Look at how restrictive Unity and Syndicate's modern day was because it's just cutscenes that weren't very eventful.
I've we're going to go on a tangent here, but it's I think it's an interesting one to discuss. So I have been on a bit of a journey with the modern day segments of this franchise, and I was definitely in the group that you described, which was, why are we in the modern day? You're interrupting. The way I remember a review I listened to or watched on YouTube a long time ago was this was in someone playing Odyssey was they were recording their gameplay, and it was one of those fixed points in Odyssey where you get ejected or removed from the animus. And this person said, "What on earth is going on? We interrupt this historical broadcast to bring you to a modern day story where you don't know who the characters are. You have no idea what's going on. I want to get back into my ancient Greek simulator." And I was definitely in that camp because I didn't understand who Layla was. I didn't know who Victoria Bibbo was. I didn't know what an animus was because it isn't explained in Odyssey. And I mean, there's only, what, three times I think that you the game forces you out of the Animus. I think, I could be wrong. It might be 4, but it's not very often, and it's only for very short sequences. And I was definitely in that camp of, I don't get this. I'm enjoying playing as Cassandra. I've got stuff to do in the ancient Greek world. Let's get back into the Animus and do the ancient Greek world. Um, and it's very similar with Origins. There's only a few sort of short sequences, although I think it's a little clearer what's going on. And I suppose if I'd have played them in order of release, I'd have had a clearer understanding of Layla's journey from being a member of Abstergo to being to leaving or running from them and joining the assassins. But anyway, going back to the earlier games where the modern day story is tightly linked to the historical segments, and the things you learn and the things you uncover and the skills you build through the bleeding effect directly influence the modern day, it becomes an integral part of the story. And I suppose the short answer is, if you're going to have modern day, you've got to do it well and have it interactive and have some character growth or some story arc for the modern day characters as well. And you're right. I didn't particularly like Black Flag's first person view, although at least you got to interact and you were kind of exploring Abstergo Entertainment, and there was plenty to do there, and there was a story. I didn't really like the first person view, but it's fine. But yeah, Unity and Syndicates was kind of a low point. So I'm glad it's back. And I personally, again, as I say, my opinion has changed completely on this point. I'd like the next games to have that modern day fleshed out more, the connection much clearer, and the work you're doing in the Animus to then influence what you do in the modern day, in the real world, if you like, outside of the simulation. So yeah, total change of opinion from me over the last couple of years.
I just wanted to also add, if it's okay, one thing they should do, and I know they can do it because they've done some stuff pre Valhalla, which is like explain the world of Valhalla. AC3 has a fantastic intro video which sums up the story of the first games, modern day, till now. It tells you how Desmond got kidnapped, who's working on
Yes, it
Abstergo, how he got
does.
fined.
Yes.
I think every 2 to 3 games they should release a YouTube video way before, which is an entirely cinematic story to sum up the events of Order so far. Now, you don't have to do like everything from game one to now in one video. You could do segments, because I know there's Desmond's story, which is 1 to 3. You could release that as a YouTube video, his story in modern day. There's the Initiate story, Black Flag, Rogue, Unity, Syndicate. You can make that as a modern day story. And then you have the Mythology trilogy, Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla. You could do that as a modern day video story. So when somebody picks up the next game and like, alright, I don't understand this modern day, I'm gonna go watch these videos. They're caught up. And then more people, when they're pulled out of the Animus, aren't gonna be sitting like, well, I want to go back in because I don't understand what's going on, because there's a video 2 clicks away that'll give you the entire modern day storyline without being a lore dump. We don't want a lore dump, just a quick like, my name is William Miles, my son was Desmond, this was his life. Something short, simple, cinematic, 5-10 minutes long that people are going to be hooked. It doesn't need to be a lore dump of the history, because not a lot of people are in it for the lore dump. I know if you're a fan and you already know the lore dump by now, but if you're a new player who wants to know one day, you need a riveting and catchy storyline that's just flashy. It gives a very brief synopsis of the story in 10 minutes, and enough to let you know what's going on. And it can be done. I could probably create it.
I'll tell you what would be interesting. I think AC2 has the same, doesn't it? I think when you start AC2, you get a previously on Assassin's Creed kind of intro video that recounts the events of AC1. I don't know if Brotherhood and Revelations have the same. I don't think so, but my memory's not perfect. I tell you what, that what you've said there about taking the player sitting at their console or sitting at their PC um, to a video that kind of sets up where you are as the player. So it is now 2021. We've got a conflict between the assassins and the Templars, and we're both fighting for free will, but with different methods and all the rest of it. You could do that in a kind of in-universe way, I think this was, and again, I've joined this franchise very late, so I've missed everything about the Initiates website and some of the puzzles that used to be hidden in different places. But what about if when the game launches, all you get is a QR code on the screen, and the player scans it with their phone and is taken to that kind of video, but it's presented as like an Assassin's Brotherhood, briefing to the new player. So you could do it in universe way that would kind of make it more engaging as well. So you feel like you're part of the Assassins, or if we're telling the story the other way around, it's an Abstergo branded web page. It's abstergo.com or something, and you log into a secret portal and get a video briefing of the recent history and the fact that the assassins are terrible or something. That could be a really nice interactive in-universe way of doing what you've said, catching people up with what the modern day is and what they've missed and why they are in this strange machine and why they're going to go back into history.
I think, and I'm thinking of the Matrix here, so like really it's weird. But the Matrix 4 on a stuff tangent released a web page to as a teaser for the new Matrix film, but you'll see where I'm going with this. And it had a red and a blue pill, which is very canonical to the series,
Ah,
and you could
yes.
choose the red or blue. As you said, I don't know about QR codes because I don't even know how the hell they work, and I'm 27. But if the way I'm looking at Valhalla's menu in my head, if there was a big button that says um, join the fight here, for example, or join the Brotherhood, when you click on it, I would love to see like an Abstergo logo pop up, but then it vibrate like shakes as if it's being hacked by the assassins, and then it splits diagonal, so you see half the Brotherhood logo and half the Templar logo, and you get to choose. And this would be a great way for lore hunters to see like how Abstergo present the story, how assassins, and if you press assassins, you could always like tell the same story as Abstergo, but what they're hidden. So if in the Abstergo one they talk about, um, I'm trying to think. I'm just gonna make it like Genghis Khan, for example, just a random character I'm picking off my head, being this mighty leader who's doing everything right. You could then replay the exact same scene in the assassin one, but you could always do it from an angle where it's just someone hiding in the shadows. We were in the shadows when that happened, and it is true he was this, and this, but he didn't get there on his own. He had help. You know what I mean? That sort of like
I
gives
do. So are you
fans.
thinking of they did this in Liberation, didn't they, with what was the hacker called? Erudito.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you
the
thinking
one.
of that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you play the story once and you get the Templars, shall we say, edited view of history, and then you unlock the real. I have to say, the first time I did one of those, I thought my game had bugged because it was playing the same cutscene again, and I just kind of skipped through it because I thought I'd hit a bug, and then I then subsequently realised, no, this is supposed to happen. You're supposed to watch this twice, and actually there are subtle differences between the two versions of Aveline's story. But anyway, yeah, that was just me not knowing what the hell I was doing. But there's so much that would be a really interesting, like what you said there. Would you play the game twice then? Would you play it once and as assassin and
I
get that
was
viewpoint, or and then relaunch it as a Templar? Or
I was more looking at this as like an interactive website, just for
gotcha.
people that have never actually played the games. Because I think if you've never played the games and this was an interactive website where you could choose, and if they're always updating it with information and mini bits of lore all the time, then really by the time if someone's like bored of playing Valhalla, for example, then this website was launched to prepare for the next game, and they go through it all, they may think, you know what, I'm gonna boot Valhalla up. I like this website. I'm gonna boot Valhalla. Or you play it and you get to see Abstergo's versions of the First Crusade on this website, and you're like, hang on a minute, that's not how I remember it in AC1. So you watch the Assassin's versions and it talks about Altair and what Altair did, and you think, I may pick up AC1 now and try it. It's like an interactive website
Do you
that's
know what
gonna
you're? Do you know what I
jumpstart
think you'll
fans.
feel like you're describing?
What?
I feel like you're describing the Helix Navigator screen that we're presented with very briefly at the start of Unity.
Yes, like yeah, that would work, but it's like video format. So after
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
watched them
yeah.
all and you've interacted, you may want to go out and buy the games. And it's a great way for people who are great fans of the series just to have a bit of fun, watch them all. You may have already owned the games, but there's nothing good laugh about watching Abstergo try and tell a warped view of Assassin's Creed 1, and you're sort of like, well, that didn't happen, and then you watch the assassin version, and you're like, see, that's what really happened. But I think we're going off on tangent here.
No, I think we're here for the tangents. Let's be honest. The subject of the podcast is only a suggestion. I think that could be fantastic. You because again, when do we see? I forget if it's Black Flag or Rogue or Unity, but one of them does the long intro video about the Phoenix Project and trying to resurrect or trying to rebuild the Isu DNA. It doesn't really matter
Unity.
which game it is. Say again, sorry.
It was Unity.
It was okay.
Yeah, I remember that because I booted Unity up 2 weeks ago, and I remember watching that, and I said to
Good man.
myself, "Why the heck have they not done this again?" Because it's the only time I don't want to skip a cutscene because I
Yeah,
want to know what's going on. I'm in it for the fun.
there's a story idea right there. The assassins and the Templars become aware in the modern day and maybe in the historical time period. So you've got the two stories mirroring each other. They become aware of a sage and they chase them. Oh, have we done that already?
Um,
Yeah, we've done that in Black
Black
Flag,
Flag
haven't we? Yeah.
and Unity because technically the Sage was the leader of the Templars, and there was supposed to be a unification, but then
Did
Belech.
they? Yeah, but I suppose there was there was not really any modern day. Yeah, because
No,
there was no modern day. So it wasn't like you were parkouring through modern day London in like a Watch Dogs Legion style world trying to find a modern day sage. So
that would be
yeah,
dope. AC. See, this
I've
is
seen so many people sharing pictures of, especially when they added that Assassin's Creed kind of tie-in story to Watch Dogs Legion. I've never played a Watch Dogs game, um, so I don't know anything about it, but it does look cool.
but
It really
this
does.
is this is what's so restrictive about the franchise. And I'm being honest here as a fan who's been playing it for 14 years since number one. The best part of AC3, in my opinion, wasn't just the modern past. It was the fact of in modern day you did infiltration missions. There was a
Absolutely.
reason. And I'm going to be honest here, with the size of the maps they're creating, with the size of hard drives, with the amount of technical power we've got, I could forgive Assassin's Creed for giving us a smaller map if they reflected that by giving us a modern day that was interactable. I don't want an open world modern day. No way. I don't want that. But if you're going to give us, let's say, an open world Japanese game, for example, in the past, I want a very linear hub world in modern day where to advance the past, you can go and so if you come to a mission in the past and you want to do it, you can do it. But if you want to get some information behind why you're going to that mission, or if you may get like Rebecca over at Tannoy saying that they've got some new intel, we need you out the Animus. So you could leave the Animus at your choice, you don't have to. And the intel could be that your location is compromised, we need to move. And as you're fleeing the location, you're being chased by Templars, and you can fight them. Really basic combat system, or you can stealth your way out and you move to a new location.
I've just had an idea building on that point. So if we bring the bleeding effect back into it, the discussion, let's say at that moment you are pulled out of the Animus because the Templars have arrived. The skills that you build, and again, not everyone likes skill trees, but let's say in your playthrough of the historical or your reliving of the historical memories, you've started to specialize your assassin, let's say, as a stealthy player. When you're pulled out of the Animus into the modern day, um, your bleeding effect has taken those abilities, so you have to play stealthy in the modern day. You can still go in melee combat or whatever, but maybe you won't be as strong. So that could be a nice crossover of the what you're learning and what you're experiencing in the Animus with what's possible in the modern day.
And on about that, with Blade Effect, I never thought of that. It's great. But it could also really be, as you said, with Basim. If Basim comes out and, let's say, a Templar runs him with a knife, he reflex dodges it in like a cinematic style. I don't want a QTI event, I just want like a cutscene. He dodges it really skillfully and counterattacks it. And I want like a very faint outline of his body of like the assassin to symbolize that he's remembering an ability that the assassin you play as, like that's the bleeding effect. Like this isn't his ability, he doesn't know how to do this, but he spent that long in the Animus, he's remembering that moment, how to remove that stealthily. And it will make the series more open. It'll give more people to engage with both parts of the world, the past and the present.
Yeah, yeah. What we're saying then is we need modern day, but just spend more time on it. Make it more interesting,
Yeah,
more interactive.
I love AC2 where you get to find the vault with Desmond. You're not just
Yeah,
looking at a computer, you're
yeah.
not looking around, you're finding stuff. I want to
And then in Brotherhood, you're retracing the steps of Ezio's family, aren't you? As they're
yeah,
fleeing, they flee Monteriggioni at the start of Brotherhood, and you're taking that path into the arts. It's really
ex-
touching when you see the ghosts of Ezio and Claudia and Maria running out of that cave.
and that would be really good to do now. I think, and especially like I'm not going to link it to Watch Dogs because I don't want it to get that connection too
No, no, no,
much.
no.
But
Not that was kind of a shorthand, but no, I'm the same as you. They're
yeah,
separate games. Don't
uh,
mess them up.
I think they could do what Desmond did. Like if let's say Rebecca says that a key component needed to move forward is to assassinate a certain businessman that runs the Abstergo finances is in a football stadium. You can hack the power just like Desmond did, and you can walk through the crowd, and you can feel the crowd around you. And as you get to the target, you kill him as the crowd, and you walk out of the stadium. It's very linear. It's very short. There's no flashiness about it, but that's just Assassin's Creed. The power's out. You've gone through a blaze in the crowd. You were not there. You're a ghost in the wind. No one knows how it died. You just
Mm,
did. And
mm.
you've got your objective. And it makes the games less restrictive. You're not locking them to a very simplistic story. You are exploring the modern day without relying too much on just tropes or a mini hub base that can be ignored.
Yeah, the MMA fight, and then the next modern day scene in AC3 where they go back to the Abstergo office in Rome, where it kind of all began. They are fantastic sequences.
Jumping off the crane. That's what I remember.
Yes, yes. It's just more of that. That would be great. I want to move the discussion on a little bit. So one of the other talking points that we had thought about was what historical periods can we visit or should we visit, and what locations should we visit. I mean, with Odyssey we went back 2,500 years before the Hidden Ones were founded. Origins, we see the founding of the Hidden Ones about 2,000 years ago, and then we've jumped forward and we've explored a lot of the 15th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. But mostly it's the Mediterranean or the Near East. It's France, UK, North America, and the Caribbean. And I'm wondering where else in the world? I mean, the world's a big place, a lot of history, a lot of countries. Where would you like us to go next? Where do you think would be an interesting setting?
Anywhere, pretty much. Literally anywhere. I am such a history nerd. I'll go anywhere. But Babylon, that's been on my wish list for years.
Ooh,
The
Babylon,
Fall
interesting.
of Babylon, it's perfect. Aztec, Incan, pretty much anywhere that I think the best way to put it, if it hasn't been talked about a ton in history in schools or hasn't had a ton of movies or books made about it, explore it. In my opinion, even though I love the franchise and I love every location they've done, every location is modern, is Hollywoodized. Vikings, even not to be rude, but Odyssey's starting intro was basically 300. Come on,
You're not being
it's
rude, and it was, and obviously that's a great marketing tactic, isn't it? To just pin that story or have that link between Cassandra and Leonidas and the 300 Spartans. Absolutely, I know it was kind of obvious. You're right, Hollywood, bit cheesy, maybe bit obvious, but probably from a marketing point of view, it makes a lot of sense.
it does, but I can also argue from a marketing point of view that as an avid book reader, I'm going to use books as a good example. When I find a book that I've never heard of, or I don't know what the author's about, for example, I'm going to get lynched for this, Terry Pratchett. I didn't know what Terry Pratchett's Discworld was. I knew nothing. I went and bought them, and I was hooked because I knew nothing. And I think a game could work the same. Oh, you want to play as a pirate of the Caribbean? I know everything about Blackbeard. It'd be fun to see him. Oh, do you want to play this Aztec game from a history you've never heard of? ooh, this could be interesting. I don't know anything about this place, so I'm gonna
Mm.
play it to learn more. And we have Discovery Tour. Literally, we could just do any time zone in history and rely on Discovery Tour to teach people. It will be one of the biggest marketing tools in history.
Discovery Tour is amazing. Are you thinking then of Discovery Tour as the lure to bring people into the next game? So Discovery Tour before the main game is released.
Exactly. Imagine a Discovery Tour that's a standalone DLC, not a standalone game. So it's you get it for free separately, meaning they don't have to put as much resources into mirroring the game world, but take out any bits that will affect the storyline, so characters, dialogue, or anything, something that can't be data mined. Exactly, because no data miners are like.
Some of the lengths people are going to. I mean, we won't discuss leaks on this show because I just don't think it's fair on the
No,
developers or on players who don't want leaks. Of course, we talk about spoilers after the game is released, but yeah, we're not going to discuss leaks. But yeah, the lengths some people can go to find clues about characters, dialogue, location is. I mean, it's technically impressive, but personally, I've come to the conclusion that I'd rather not know. I'd rather experience the game completely sort of independently the first time it's released or the first time a DLC is released or whatever.
and I think like a good example, if someone dropped on my console the Discovery Tour for Valhalla as a pre-download, let's say I'm gonna say August to September last year, and we just explored the Viking Age, a bit of Asgard, a bit of Jotunheim, but don't explore like big surprises like Vinland. That would have been kept out, obviously. So keep Vinland out. But if you don't like put any character models in that are going to be in the game, to create a new set of NPCs, because I know Ubisoft is great with NPCs. There was 10,000 in Unity, so we know they can make NPCs. So if they had a Discovery 2, which was NPCs that aren't in the main game, so it's not spoiling anything, I would have been hooked. Especially if I was walking around Asgard and Jotunheim and I'm like, this mythology is fantastic, but how's it going to work in the game? Why am I in England? Why am I learning about Ivar the Boneless? Why am I learning about the wars and all that they fought in this time zone? What does this mean? I'm more likely to go buy the game because I want my answers.
Could be an interesting way of whetting people's appetite, couldn't it?
Definitely. Imagine an Aztec game, and I would love your opinion, but you play Discovery Tour and you learn about how the Incas and the Aztecs mythology worked, how they worship the gods. You see this lush, vibrant world, you explore it, and you see different parts that you can parkour, but you can't because your character models isn't designed like it's just Discovery Tour. Would you honestly be more hyped to go play the game because you found these locations in Discovery Tour beforehand?
I think, yeah. I mean, you'd have to do it very carefully to avoid spoilers. But as you say, it's just a world with the physics and an NPC that you use to explore the world. So yeah, to visit these vast, beautiful cities, and maybe you have some naval exploration or just exploration of open lands. I mean, there was large cities in South America. There were large cities in pre-Columbian North America. There were large cities in Africa, India, Asia. There's huge areas to explore, and if you're going to create the assets anyway for the game, why not release it almost like a teaser trailer, isn't it? So it'd be, or even if you just release one city or one location as an explorable area with the kind of Discovery Tour layer over the top, wouldn't that be a fascinating way of teasing people with the game?
More than likely, I think I'd be more hyped to buy it. Personally, I think it would make my jaw hit the floor, and I'm like, cool. Like, even if you want to be evil, for example, there could be a location that is a big mountain with, let's say, the assassin logo on it in Discovery Tour, and you walk past it loads of times, and people data mine it, people dig into it, and they can't find anything. So you play the game, and you look for that exact same rock that you found in Discovery Tour with the logo, and you find there's never a rock there, but an assassin bureau. That's what they tease. They tease that in that location they put a
Yeah,
rock,
yeah.
but it was actually an assassin bureau. I would die of happiness. Let's like, that's the biggest tease in history. I bought this game
Yes.
to find out what that rock was. this is the best tease you've ever done.
That could be awesome. Or you could even go further, and you could even have a building that you enter, and there's an area that you can't explore, but there's a bit of glowing yellow stuff that's just out of sight. Now, of course, we know that maybe it's an apple of Eden or something, but you could do all sorts of little tea. That would be really interesting. I like that.
And I think that little bit just shows how restricted the franchise is getting. They're relying way, way too much on people knowing this history. Like,
Mm,
oh, people are going to
mm.
know about Vikings. We'll just do Vikings. Oh, people know this. We'll just do that. Look at Egypt. They said that Egypt was too boring to do, and they did
I
it.
read that. I read that when I was playing Origins last year and watching YouTube videos and trying to learn a bit more. Apparently, it was one of the most requested locations of the fans. But yeah, it was deemed, at least for a long time, not appropriate or yeah, not interesting, which I find staggering. I mean, look at the game they created and look at the Discovery Tour they created. There's thousands of years of history there and complex layers of different nationalities and all the rest of it. So it's fascinating.
But at the same time, you don't learn much about Egyptian mythology or Egyptian life in school. I didn't. I had to find a book about it.
Oh, I remember. I mean, we're going back a very long time. But certainly in primary school, we did a little bit of Egyptian history. But we're talking, I mean, I was probably 10. So my memory has faded since then about what we might have learnt about Egypt way back then. I was thinking when we came into the episode about the stories that we've had so far, the characters that we've played as. And I was thinking, where are those kind of edge characters that we could use as links to new parts of the world? And I'm going to tell you my list, and you can tell me who I've forgotten and maybe some others as well. So we explore North America a lot in AC3, in Rogue, and a little bit in Valhalla. And I wonder if there are links you could establish there to Native Americans and to their nations and their time. We've got the assassin leader in Black Flag, whose name I can never remember. Is it Atabai? Something like that.
I think so,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, because the assassin base, for want of a better word, is Tulum, which I think is modern day Mexico. Could be wrong here. But it's certainly Central American mainland. It's not on one of the islands in the Caribbean. So you've got a Mayan link there with his character. We've got Henry Green, of course, or Jayadeep Mir, to use his proper name. We know that he went back to India with Evie Fry after the events of Syndicate. Actually, we should have a shout out here for our friend of the show, Ikra. He wrote quite an interesting thread, maybe last week, about how an Assassin's Creed game in India would be or how India would be a fantastic setting for an Assassin's Creed game, with especially during the period of British rule in the 19th century, um, where you've got huge cities. There's your urban setting. You've got a large country if you want to make an open world game with very diverse habitats of deserts and forests and mountains. Um, you've got the tension between the Indian people living there, and then you've got the British sort of as overlords, if you like. So there's a lot of potential there for a really good story. If you go back another century, and I think you mentioned this when we were talking ahead of the show, um, you've got the period of the 7 Years' War, when you've got the French, the Portuguese, the British all kind of vying for control of this continent and its resources. So there's an awful lot of storytelling potential just in India.
I think um I think Indie would be a good one, but it's about cultural appreciation as well. So they've got to get the culture right. But
Absolutely.
I think just the biggest thing for me is Altair decided to shut Masaif down and send everyone to make their own brotherhood and to make themselves move back to the shadows. If that's not an invitation to do untold history, to do untold locations, to do untold anything, I don't know what is. A master assassin basically sending everyone out to the world. You can't just assume that he's just gone and lived in England, anywhere in Europe and
Yeah, yeah.
America. They would have gone everywhere. I bet you someone would have gone to Australia or Denmark or Finland. There's plenty of locations. And to be fair, if transmedia can do World War II stuff, why can't the games? You could even tell stories from World War II in lesser known countries like Madagascar and Africa. As long as the cultural appreciation is fine, I don't see a problem in doing any locations that's not publicly marked in schools or Hollywood.
I'm in complete agreement. I'd be very always happy to explore new places, new time periods, new people. Definitely. Um, I want to move the conversation on to our final topic. So we we've had many different characters, as I said at the start of the show. Some of whom start their story as members of the Assassins. Some who join towards the end of their story, and some who never join. So I'm wondering, how could we sort of break those restrictions? What could we create um, in way of telling a new story and with a new and interesting angle?
Um, my dream story, as I'm going to call it, because it's one that I really wanted to see, and it was one we.
Well, hey, now this was going to be my final question to close the show. So yes, let's hear your dream sort of next game story.
Well, it kind of fits into what you mentioned, like what new angle, which is why I brought it up, and it was something we discussed in our, maybe first or second recording, but yeah, that's another story. um,
You're
in
not supposed to tell the secrets of how our first recording went to a complete mess. But oh no, too late now.
Too late, too late. A new interesting angle that's never been done before. No one thinks to do it because it probably makes no sense. But don't move from the cabin in the woods in Valhalla, right? I want William Miles to come back and be like, I don't trust you, blah 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 blah. And then as he storms out, um, there's this like waiting period where they're trying to figure out the next move. So Basim hacks the Animus because but it's easy news to he can do what he wants, and he goes to find a time period that he found in the reader's databanks of why the creed is so important. And it comes this modern day, this past timeline where the Templars are gone. They've been wiped out of this area. The assassins are done. They've been burnt out. They've been fighting for so long that the Templars, they've just upped and left. But you're the last assassin, and you have
Ooh,
to
you're
bring.
already you're already. This is sounding interesting. The Last Assassin. I love it. Go on.
You're the last assassin, and you don't want them to fail. You hold the creed so dear in your heart that you need people to understand the truth behind the maxim. Nothing is truth, everything's permitted. It's not free will to do what you want, it's free will with consequence. And I want the whole game to be you trying to recruit brotherhoods and sisters of the assassins, new civilians that don't know about the maxim, to fight what I'm going to nickname as remnants. And these remnants are just people that have seen Templars die and have hold them as martyrs. They're martyrs in their eyes. They don't believe in the Templar cause. They don't care about Templars. But these people that were Templars, they hold them dear in the hearts, and they're now martyrs. And you need to fight the martyrs from bringing the Templars back. And the whole game is you're exploring the whole creed, the three tenets. Stave the blade from innocent. Go through the whole story as you recruit people. People start killing hundreds of people to get to the target, but you need to teach them patience, teach them skills. You yourself go on your first mission and kill hundreds of people to get what you want. But after that bloodbath and you do the confession scene, you realize that this wasn't the way. You've made his death worse. You've made him a martyr now. You're making a martyr of a martyr. That's
Yeah, yeah.
sinister. So he will be your final target, for example. And I'll get to that in a minute. So the next time you do work something, you're just working towards staving the blade from the innocent. And that's the whole theme of the entire game, is stave the blade from the innocent. That's the whole idea. And the second creed you follow is also just behind the scenes, is as you're trying to create a new brotherhood, there's going to be a conflict. How people think the brotherhood should be versus how it shouldn't be. And in one of the missions, you learn the creed that you do not compromise the brotherhood. You're a family, you're a unit. If one dies, we all die. You do not compromise it. And the last one is hide in plain sight. And I think that should be the final one, that once all the remnants are defeated and you realize that This is why we stave the blade from the innocent. We can't make martyrs of martyrs. We've got to be careful. Arno, but I think it should be before Unity, but people who've played Unity will know that Arno's right. It's an invitation to chaos if we let it. It's a
Yeah,
dogma, as I'm going to
yeah.
put it. And at the very end, the assassins have made the one, the remnants are defeated, and everyone's celebrating. But you turn to your disciples and you say that no one can know what we have done, and you just walk into the shadows. And that's how the game ends, that no one can know what we've done. And the whole modern day storyline is just running missions for the Templars, for the assassins, trying to weaken the Templars, trying to find a next foothold. And every time you do that, Basim is remembering why he became an assassin, why his life was an assassin before he was reincarnated as an Isu. And he
Oh, that's
starts to,
interesting. So you think it could be a bit of, not only is what you've described as the historical part of the story fantastic, but you think it could be a way of Basim to kind of relive and understand his journey and his life.
yeah, like maybe realize that he's he's gonna hurt as many people as he can to bring his family back, and I don't blame him for that. He loves his family, and that's amazing. But I think it'd be nice to do some modern day missions where he has a choice to kill somebody to get information, but he remembers that assassins stave the blade from the innocent. Why? Because it's more tactical. If you kill this innocent civilian now, people are gonna know you're gonna be a wanted man. But if you stave your blade from the innocent and you don't bother and you return to the shadows, then no one's going to hunt you for killing an innocent man. If you take down a target and there's enough proof that he should be in jail, people are not going to come after you as much. And then there should be them realizations at certain points that the creed is an idea that can be applied to everything if you so will it.
I love it, mate. So it takes what, 3 to 4 years to make one of these games. So 2025.
Get
I'm looking.
cracking.
I absolutely get cracking. I think that sounds. I mean, it sounds fascinating, and what we've discussed today is there are so many opportunities to tell this story in new ways, whether it's just through new locations or a different viewpoint. And I love your story pitch. If only I had $100 million or whatever it costs to make one of these games, and I could turn this pitch into reality.
I think the best reason why I love my pitch so much, and I'm not trying to be big headed, is it falls outside of the norms of the law. It's not assassins versus Templars, but it's assassins. They're there. It's taking away all the tropes that we've discussed.
Yeah.
It's just making it fluid. There's no restrictions, and it's everything. But have you got anything else to say, or have we run out of time?
I think we're running out of time. I mean, we've covered an awful lot in terms of the games that we've played before and the stories we've told before. And yeah, there's a big world out there, and there's 2,500, well, 2,000 years of the Hidden Ones history anyway. And as you said with Babylon, we could go further back to the time of Darius and so on. So yeah, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to.
So I think in the show we have discussed if Assassin's Creed is restrictive, and I think the bottom line is no. And yes, at the same time, it's restrictive to your own ideas. The only people that's restricted this franchise is you who creates it. If you want to lock to Hollywood locations, you're restricting it. If you don't want to make modern day big, you're restricting it. And I think the bottom line is have fun. Make the game adhere to the law. The sky's the limit. As long as everything is checklisted on the law, pretty sure you can go anywhere in history. If you have any thoughts on the show and you want to discuss your ideas and your feelings on if it's restricted, then you can find me on Twitter at AC Let's Talk, or you can find James on Twitter at James Tiddlyquid. More than happy to have some funky discussions about where you want the series to go next. If you want to be part of the show, then you can also follow the links below as well, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. See you soon.